Welcome one and all, welcome to Moments of Sublime Perfection, brought to you one day in advance on Libry.tv or Libry.com, that is LBRY. It is a decentralized digital distribution platform that actually lets us earn a couple of cents for each view of our videos. That's something we haven't been able to do on YouTube for 3 years. I'm not even sure we're getting $1 per 1,000 views on YouTube anymore. So please, if you can, if you want to, check out our content through Libry. A lot of it is there. The newer stuff is absolutely there. Got it? Okay, thank you. Good. Now back to the show. Moments of Sublime Perfection, a show where I talk about the good things, the great things, the things that obviously somebody really cared about in games that otherwise no one cared about. And on today's edition we have the Iron Man game from 2008. You may not remember this. That's fine. I had to review it back then, so I do remember it. I remember the trailers and how good they looked. And then the PC version came out and it did not look as good because this was not the version that came out for the Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3. This was a port of the Wii version which looked like an early PlayStation 2 game. A dreadful PlayStation 2 game. A game where I guess most of the budget went into licensing the Iron Man song by Black Sabbath, which they used in the first level of the game. The whole song. It lasts about as long as the first level itself. And after that, it is mostly all downhill, because this was a shovelware Wii game, where, for example, you had a mission where you had to follow a truck. But if the truck got farther than 200 meters away from you, there would be an automatic game over screen. You lost the mission. Retry? Even though you are Iron Man. In the game, you run faster, like on the ground, you run faster than the truck moves. In the air, you can go supersonic and reach the end of the level before the truck even leaves the starting area. And you still lose because you got away from the truck. It was a terrible game, but it did do one thing right. It actually made you feel like you were in the Iron Man suit. It did this through various upgrades you could get automatically as you progress through the story, through the fact that you had multiple suits depending on what part of the movie you were in, and you could choose which ones you wanted to use with each mission. Not that it mattered all that much, but most of all, it gave you something that made you feel like you weren't just a guy that could fly and shoot beams, that you were actually in the suit itself. It gave you power management. It wasn't something complicated, it was the same thing you had in X-Wing, the same thing you have in pretty much every space game, the same thing you have now in Elite Dangerous. You can shift your power distribution from weapons to armor or to propulsion. This both let you have more energy associated with each of these systems, letting you fly for longer, shoot more, or take more damage. But also, when you maxed out a subsystem, what it did would actually change. If you maxed out propulsion, you'd have an afterburner that made every level feel small and most objectives pointless. You could go supersonic, so why bother chasing a truck? Why saying I lost it if it's 200 meters away? I'm in a suit that can travel that distance in less than a second. If you put all that energy into weapons, you'd unlock the Unibeam, which, after generous charge time, could basically blow up everyone. It was something very simple, very small, a very tiny detail, but it worked. It actually sold me on the idea of Iron Man. The rest of the game was terrible. There was nothing there to back up that component. But that component in itself showed that somebody actually had an idea there. It actually thought things through. Even the tutorial level where you just fly through rings in the sky because that's what you do in every game, isn't terrible because the way the suit flies actually works. You can hover and move while hovering or engage supersonic speed. It's your choice. It's not terrible. The suit is not terrible. Now this may not seem to you like a moment of sublime perfection, but I ask you to think back a bit to Anthem. Remember Anthem? It somehow managed to be an inferior experience of piloting a robot suit than the shovelware movie tie-in made for the Wii with no budget or time. I almost made a show about Anthem, but it was so dull and boring and disheartening that I couldn't find the energy to do it. I couldn't reallocate energy from my wanting this to be over subsystem to the wanting to make a show about it subsystem, which is something that I could actually do with Iron Man because it had that feature in it and it inspired me to make a review of it. Also, that was my job, and I had to. Now, as with most of the games in this series, I'm not saying you should go out and play them. They're terrible. Most of them you probably will not even be able to buy anymore because they were made for a quick buck and then went poof. This game, just like the Expendables one, was treated like nothing more than a mug or a t-shirt, something you put on the shelves while the movie's in theaters and then you don't need it anymore. It has no inherent value. And yet, somebody at A2M, Artificial Mind and Movement, the developer of the Iron Man game, the terrible Iron Man game, tried to make it somewhat in a little bit interesting, in spite of it not needing to be. And that in itself is a miracle, I would say. Were that mechanic present in a better game, it could have elevated it to an even greater status. Here though, it is wasted on a cheap cash-in. Though some of the boss battles were also a bit better than what Anthem has. I'll see you again soon with a new show, maybe a new Moments of Sublime Perfection. Don't forget to check us out on Libri, and Raul will probably kill me if I keep forgetting to ask you to like and subscribe. So I'll probably forget and, well, it'll be my fault. Goodbye everybody. Take care.